there.
How's everyone doing? Good. All right. Should we do intros?
Sure, why not?
Start?
Well, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Jenkins. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm a speaker and consultant. So I help organizations and leaders better understand the emerging generations so they can attract, retain, lead, engage this next generation. I also write for Inc. magazine. I've got a column called Next Generation Insights for the last 2 or 3 years. And also have a podcast as well where we interview Fortune 500 leaders all on the topic of the future of work. So I'll bring some of those insights, hopefully, to our conversation today. But I'm glad to be here.
And I'm Mary Jo Spiekerman. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources for Hausmann-Johnson Insurance. Hausmann-Johnson is located here in Madison, and I'm the head of the Human Resources Consulting Practice. One of the things that we pursue at Hausmann-Johnson is Great Place to Work certification through the Great Place to Work Institute. I'm pleased to report that we are certified, and we know that that's very important to us as we move forward to recruit and retain people throughout the future so that we can be successful. And I'm very happy to be here today, and very happy to be here with Ryan. So I was going to start off and by asking Ryan, I know that you've done a lot of research on young people entering the workforce, and what are some of the things that you have found that those young people are surprised to learn about with regard to employers and, say, employment in general?
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating how the expectations across generations are very different, and we attribute that to the day and age that we've grown up with technology and the hyperconnectivity that now folks are growing up into. It's really changed how they interact with the world, how they buy, how they learn, how they show up to work, how they communicate. And so there's very different expectations. And so when this next generation's coming into the workforce, a lot of the expectations they have don't match that existing company or the existing teams that are inside those organizations. So those might be things like career impatience, right? There's a certain appetite to perhaps move up in an organization that hasn't been traditionally what's been done at that organization. How communications, different channels in which you're supposed to communicate. Some of the expectations, I think, are just around just how innovative or tech advanced these organizations are. So many times we've seen that this next generation is coming into the workforce, and oftentimes organizations are a little bit more archaic than what they're used to, and so there's a lot of adjustment period. So there's, now more than ever, there's really this clashing happening inside of work across generations, and so it's certainly a relevant conversation.
So I have to believe that employers are making some assumptions about this incoming group that are probably wrong. Do you see that happening?
Yes, we hear it a lot. Of course, the word entitled, lack of work ethic, those get thrown around a lot. But again, I think it's the definitions aren't lining up. How previous generations may have viewed work or success or hard work is very different, and how that's perceived by the emerging generations. So how you get through that is you start having more open dialogue about it, right? You start being a little bit more communicative of like what you're looking for, how you want to communicate, what are some of the things you're looking to get out of work. So those are all things that are, stigma, but I think ultimately when it comes down to it, it's about we got to be really careful with our assumptions because it's so easy as individuals, right? Because we only know what we know, and we only know what it's like to be us as an individual. So it's really easy to assume that other people want to communicate the way in which you want to communicate. It's really easy to assume that I should lead this person because that's how I want to be led. And that's just not an effective strategy. So it's against human nature, but we got to constantly put ourselves in the shoes of other people and try to think through, what's been their experience, their background, how they were raised, and try to figure out what's the most effective way to lead that individual. And that's really hard to do because it's human nature for us to just think about us as number one, right? And think about only know what we know. And so it's something we have to constantly push ourselves and push each other to think in the shoes of those other folks. Yes?
So thinking of that, what are some of the emerging trends in employment that you see are being driven by the needs or the wants of younger workers?
Yeah, I think I'm really fascinated with how just work in general is evolving. And we hear a lot that this emerging generation is interested in work-life balance or work-life integration or work-life harmony. And I think that's true, but I think there's a bigger story, there's a bigger catalyst to that idea, and that's because we now live in a connected world, right? You and I now bring more of our personal lives into work. We're also bringing more work home. That wasn't always the case, right? It wasn't too long ago that you actually had to physically drive to an office, get out, and go into an office, go to your desk, and that's only where work happened. But now, with the proliferation of mobile technology, that has changed the game. So this thing has rewritten the rules for all of us, but certainly it's given new appetite and desires for this emerging generation, new expectations as well. And so this idea of work-life balance, I think why that's coming such a strong desire now is because now more than ever we have the ability to strike more of that work-life balance. So I think work and life are integrating. The lines between work and life are blurring like we've never seen before. And so I think as we talk about the future of work, I think finding ways to bring more just humanness and more of work to, it's not work-life, it's just life in general, right? And the way I think about it, if you think about the evolution of work, not, in the industrial age, the value of work was associated with strength or endurance, right? How long you could plow a field or stand in an assembly line or torque a wrench, that was the value of work. Then you moved into the information age, and the value was around knowledge, right? How much knowledge you had and putting that to use, thus the why we all, that we know the term knowledge workers. I think the future of work, where the value's going, is around emotional intelligence. Because of how fast technology is moving, AI, blockchain, it's going to remove so much of the drudgery out of work, and humans are going to be left with just what humans can do best, and that's connect, that's to deliver compassion, empathy. And so I think as we move forward in the future of work in all of our careers, I think we need to be more in tune with that emotional intelligence, and I think that is going to be really important too as work and life blend. And I think the organizations, the leaders that are going to thrive in the next century of work are ones that are going to be more human and have that emotional intelligence factor that's high. Mm-hmm. So I would like to ask you the same question about the emerging, how do you see, what are some of the trends you're seeing, especially from your position in a very well-established company?
Certainly things like transparency, honesty, knowing, sharing what's going on in the organization, more communication, like there can never be too much communication, right? But there are some other more perhaps concrete things that I saw. One of the things we were actually talking about at lunch today was one of the colleagues at lunch mentioned that as her workspace was changing, they were moving away from dedicated cubicles to nomadic work, they called it. Yeah. And so that people could plug in their laptops or whatever, they could be in different places, different viewpoints, if you will. And she was saying that while that was exceedingly comfortable for new people coming into the workforce, some of the existing people, it was very stressful. Like, wait, I don't have my space. And how am I going to find these nomads in the office? Well, you find them probably the way you do. You'd call them, you text them, whatever. But I think there is, and as we talked about it, people coming up out of college, they're not needing to go to a library, they're not needing to go to a computer bank to do their work. They can do it anywhere. So when they come into the workforce, they're just assuming you're not going to lock them in a cubicle, but that they can move around and work in different places. So that is certainly one thing. Another thing that struck me recently, I was talking to a group of some of our newer employees, and I was asking the question, well, since you've joined us, is the reason that you joined us still the reason that you're staying? As you now are working here, is what we told you about it, what it was going to be like, is that really true? Did it pan out the way you expected it to? And the employees said that it did, which of course is gratifying for us. But what they also said, they talked about how what they expected to find at our organization was a feeling of family, a feeling of belonging, a feeling of being able to make friends, a feeling of being part of a team that was both a work team and an after-hours team, and how important that was to them. Nobody said, I am so excited about insurance. Nobody, okay? Because insurance is not glamorous, right? But as I was thinking about it, I thought, it's interesting. That's what brings them together, and that's what they are really looking for after college. But then over time, it becomes I'm building knowledge, and I'm building the kind of knowledge that allows me to help people, because that's what we're about. The insurance piece is a vehicle to help people. So it's not that someone read an ad on Indeed to be in insurance and went, oh man, I've always wanted to do that. But rather, it's that they want to be in our organization and, by the way, help people via insurance. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, you brought up flexibility, and in my mind, how I interpreted across generations, I think in the past, work was viewed as a place, but now and moving forward, work is really more viewed as a space, right? Because we can work wherever now. Of course, in some cases, that's not entirely true. Someone's got to show up to unlock a door to work retail, but in general, there's still, certain folks or organizations or industries that hang tight to the 9 to 5 and physical space, and so just different perspectives. They're not wrong or right, they're just different, and we've got to be aware of those if we're going to communicate how we feel like we can best work or how the organization should perhaps change.
And I think we really have to challenge those assumptions. There's still a fair number of managers that if they don't see that person in that cubicle, their belief is that they're not working or they can't trust them. And I think that it's important for us to challenge that assumption. Is that really the case? Are there other ways of measuring productivity? Gosh, if you're sitting in your office in one wing and that person actually is in that cubicle in the other wing, do you really see them? Does it matter if they're working from home, working from the coffee shop? Now, it might, but I think that we have to really challenge it, because I know you talk about work-life harmony and the importance of that, and if we have to honestly say, okay, when do people really truly have to be in a physical place? And when can they be elsewhere? And if they can be elsewhere and they want or need to be elsewhere, then let's look for ways to make that happen.
Excellent. We're going to open it up for questions in just a moment. I've got a couple more questions for Mary Jo. It's felt by some employers that young people entering the workforce struggle with understanding and adapting to workplace norms and expectations. Can you share some examples of this?
Well, I think things like email. If your organization uses email to communicate, some people don't necessarily know that they have to open up email, or that they should open up, or how frequently they should open up email. So communicating things like that, establishing those expectations. Yes, in fact, if that's the way, it's very important that you open it, or when do you open your emails? Is it 24 hours, 48 hours? Those kinds of things. Communicating in person. Some people are very used to using devices, communicating without that face-to-face, and so a lot of things can get lost in translation, and relationships aren't built. So how do you encourage people? I think it's important to watch your young folks, and if they really are hanging in there behind their device and they're not interacting face-to-face, working on that kind of thing. Is it your expectation that they're going to maintain a calendar that shows where they are, who they're meeting with, what they're doing, that they accept calendar invitations? Is that your expectation? You may need to tell them that. Or even things like our start and end times of the day, are they hard and fast, or are they merely suggestions? Some folks have not come from worlds where start times and end times are expectations. So, those are things that you may need to watch, and if they are your expectations, you need to tell them, and then you do need to monitor it. Like, yeah, this is for real. We really do need you here at 8 or whenever.
Yeah, I think if established organizations need to be very forthcoming with all that information. We don't assume that everyone knows the attire or what time to show up to work or communication expectations. So over-communicate that. And then I think, for new folks coming into an organization, it's okay to start asking some of those questions. You'd rather have, understand the culture before, showing up or not doing a certain communications the way it should and causing a mess that way. All right, my last question for you is, how are young workers changing the performance management landscape? And then how does performance management need to be structured to be effective for them?
I think that people coming into the workforce now are, you stop and think about it, they have been through grade school and middle school and high school and college, and they've had classes and syllabi, and they have completed those classes, and they have graduated to the next level. There's been a plan, a framework, right? And then they get into the working world, and oftentimes we say to them, well, just, sit in that cubicle and do your work and good things will happen. That is not at all going to be satisfactory to them. They want to know, what am I going to learn? More and more they're asking, how am I going to be trained in this job? What are the steps? What are my milestones? How am I going to know when I'm competent? How is everybody else going to know when I'm competent? So that they're not giving me too much work or not giving me work that I actually am able to do. They want to make sure that they're being trained properly, and then they want frequent feedback. They want to know. It's not enough to say, well, we'll give you an annual performance evaluation. Just hang in there. I mean, that's death. Very frequent feedback. So I always encourage our clients to look at what the frequency is of their performance discussions, if you will. If you're doing a one and done annual performance evaluation, you may want to take a look at how well that's really serving your organization and these people. Many organizations are going to much more frequent, perhaps not as formal, perhaps not as long, but trying to find something with a frequency that's going to work for your organization, I think, is really important. Yeah, outstanding. Let's open it up to all of you. Question over here. A very enthusiastic hand up, I might add.
It's great because it's like Office Space all over again. But in projecting STEM career jobs and the scope at which these jobs are combining fields, there's a lot of crossover between different fields. How do you guys see the new generation coming into the workforce as being ready to face these new jobs that haven't yet been defined? And then from the employer side, how do employers deal with the training or maybe the inadequate training that's being provided to these incoming workers?
Great question.
When you asked that question, I was thinking about what I have told my own children and what I tell young people coming into the marketplace now, and that is that your job is to constantly reinvent yourself. And while organizations will try and help you with that, know that for the 30 or 40 years that you are going to be in the workforce, it is going to be necessary for you to take responsibility for your career. And sometimes, obviously, people come out of school with a very narrowly defined major. Can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. It can be good if it fits beautifully into the role that you're looking to have them fill. But as you pointed out, likely as not, that job is going to morph and change. It may not exist 5 years from now. So I think that it's important for us to try to encourage, like I said, both the students and the incoming workers themselves, but also we, as employers, have to be looking forward and saying, as best we can into the future, what kind of skill sets should we be training our folks in order to keep their minds open and have them be able to morph and change? Because, as you said, things are very rapidly changing.
Yeah, how would I approach that question is, I think education in general is teetering on disruption because, research now tells us the first person to celebrate their 150th birthday has already been born. So they're going to have a 100-year-long career. So how long will a 4 or 8-year degree sustain them? So the next generation is strongly going to be considering this idea of education. So the model used to be learn and then earn, right? That go learn a skill and then go put it into practice. Well, this next generation, they're going to be thinking, well, I'm going to go earn and learn. So I'm going to be learning while I'm earning. And so to Mary Jo's point, it's this idea of continuous learning. So more of the burden is going to be on organizations and companies to provide more robust learning and development. And I like to think of it as this emerging generation had access at their fingertips the world's largest how-to library, which is?
Google.
More specifically, YouTube. Yes, they've had YouTube at their fingertips. So when they step inside an organization and don't have that same level of how-to video and instant training and learning, it's going to set them back. So organizations that really want to thrive in the future have got to think about new and innovative ways to create on-demand and just-in-time learning to make sure that people are equipped to thrive in the future. And then thinking back about emotional intelligence, I think the more equipped we are with emotional and social skills, I think we'll be better suited to thrive in the 21st century and 22nd century workplace as well. Yeah, great question. Yes, in the very back.
How do we really motivate these millennials? Because I'm always afraid to send them emails at night or on the weekends. They don't like it. But I mean, like, how do I motivate them? Because sometimes they're gonna really sacrifice, like maybe 12 hours a day or something like that for reaching the company's goals.
I'm going to hold back my response because I'm going to share some thoughts on that very topic in the keynote this afternoon. So I'll let Mary Jo give her thoughts.
I think they have to love what you do, and they have to believe in your why. That, at the end of the day, is what is truly, because they have to be self-motivated. I don't know how successful you will ever be in motivating them individually, telling them and getting them excited and having them do it. They have to believe in what it is that your business or your organization is doing and want to do it to achieve your goals and achieve your why. So if you're struggling with that, and maybe it's simply a case of they don't understand your why and the mission and what it is that your organization is trying to achieve and how that why impacts the world around you. How, after you guys do your thing every day, you've made the world a better place. So frankly, it might be there, but it just might be you marketing it and communicating it to your folks.
Yes, Phil.
So the emerging generation, emerging workforce has substantially different financial burdens on especially higher education than I think any previous generation. And I'm wondering if you're seeing ripples of that in how this workforce is entering their first career in terms of the choice they get to have versus the time they have to make that choice, the motivations they have once they get to that first career, and what organizations can do to try to understand and support the fact that a major motivating factor for a lot of students recently graduating is that they need to immediately begin paying off a lot of that student loan that they've acquired.
Yeah, I think it does impact it. A lot of the research we've done and a lot of what we've seen out there too, compensation really isn't a big motivator though. And I attribute that to we live in the gig economy. So you could still have a full-time job but be selling stuff on Etsy, driving for Uber, or whatever else it might be, and you can supplement that compensation if you'd like. So there's more options for us now than ever to find multiple channels of income. So compensation hasn't been as big of a motivator in the past. Which is interesting, right? Because, yeah, there is a big student debt burden on the emerging generations. But I think we're also seeing a lot of organizations now offering that as a benefit, right? To where there's a certain percentage that will go towards paying off your student debt. And so a lot of organizations are using that as a benefit to attract this next generation. And that's become very appealing. So there's a little bit of adaptation from the employer side on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you are in high cost of living areas like Madison, that even exacerbates, I think, the problem as well. And I mean, it is absolutely commonplace in my company to have entry-level people working 2 or 3 jobs in order to be able to live, because this is a very expensive place. And then on top of it, you overlay the financial obligations that a lot of folks have. Hopefully, forward-thinking companies are looking at ways to ease that burden. Whether it is accelerating a base compensation as people are with the organization. It may be, you know, implementation of, as you said, tuition forgiveness programs, potentially paid leave programs. Hopefully, organizations have really looked comprehensively at their benefits. To ensure that they're really providing the kind of benefits that give these folks a safety net as well, because one bad medical bill can really derail things. But I would point out, interestingly, because I've done a little research on this, you would be surprised. We think about student debt as being something for 20-somethings. You'd be surprised. Remember, we had the economic recession back in 2008. There were a lot of middle-aged people that went back to school because there were no jobs, and they've racked up an enormous amount of student loan debt in a very short window to pay that off. So student debt isn't just for millennials. It is for some of us baby boomers as well.
Yeah. What else? Yes.
I appreciate your comments on emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference between emotional intelligence today and 50 years ago?
I would say 50 years ago, emotional intelligence was knowing when to shut up. It was knowing your place, right? Putting in your time, you know, because that's how you worked your way up. I think emotional intelligence now may be more tact, being vulnerable, listening better, being more inclusive, more generally supporting. I guess that's my short answer.
Yeah, I think I just think we're more aware now, right? I mean, the science has come a long way. We're all so much more aware of the things we do in human behavior, psychology, all these things. So I think we're a little bit more aware now. But I think technology has now infiltrated our lives, and like the mobile phones we all carry with us that's like really new to humanity. And so we're still trying to figure out how to use them. And of course, it's causing a barrier between human connections, and research after research is showing that we're all more lonely than ever before because we're relying so much on technology. So I think there's a bigger need for it now more than ever, and then coupled with this new information, new knowledge that we have, I think we're ready for it. And I'll give you an example too. I was speaking at a healthcare conference not too long ago, and there was a gentleman that was talking about telemedicine, talking about, he was saying that doctors can put some artificial intelligence in their ear, and that AI can diagnose the patient's cough with greater accuracy than the doctor can. It was fascinating, and so I spoke with them afterwards, and I said, if that's true, and that's truly the case, then what happens to the role of the doctor moving forward if this technology is more accurate? And his response, I thought was right on, and it's something that I agree with as well. And he said, yeah, the doctor's actually going to revert back to what they were 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, and they're able to show up and actually deliver compassion and empathy to the human and let the technology take over the rest. And so I think that's just a good example, like, because technology is not slowing down. I think it's going to only infiltrate more. I think pretty soon the devices are going to go away. Our heads are going to all of a sudden be picked up. And I think if we've got strong emotional intelligence, I think it'll just set us up for even better success. Was that helpful? We have a few more minutes, or one more question?
One more question.
One more. Okay, yes, sir.
Companies are spending, organizations are spending a tremendous amount of money and time on how to educate, workers coming into our workplace now, especially younger folks. So what is the education system doing to prepare the younger folks as they exit?
I'm not in academia, so I can't give you an actual answer. I think it's a lot goes back to what Ryan was saying about education teetering on disruption. I don't know necessarily that academia thinks about preparing people for the workforce or careers in business. I think they perhaps see themselves as educating to a higher purpose, giving you a well-rounded, educated person. And frankly, I don't know that academia will ever be able to move fast enough to really meet your needs as an employer. So I think we all may just need to get into the mindset of, all right, when we've got these new incoming people, we have to make sure that we're the ones that are giving them all that education so that they're going to be successful.
Yeah, she brings up a good point, Mary Jo. I love that insight. I don't think they're doing much, if at all, but it depends on the industry or degree, right? I mean, certainly in some roles, probably a lot of folks in this room, it's more technical, and so you just need those technical chops to really thrive in that industry. But yeah, there just seems to be more and more of a gap moving forward, and I think it's because the world's moving so fast, education's moving so slow. And so I think, as parents, I have 3 children under 5, and I have zero expectations for any of them going to college. I just don't think it'll be that relevant when they get there. But I'm saving up that they might go at some point or use some type of education.
Or you'll have a vacation.
Or we'll have a big vacation fund at that point. That would be wonderful. So my point is, I think parents or future parents that are in this room, I think a lot of onus is on them to make sure their child is ready, has the necessary skills to step into college and then learn the technical skills and then come out as a very prepared individual, because it's a very high cost, and coming out with not being fully ready is not sure it's worth it. Yeah, but again, I'm not in academia either, but great question. That's it. Sorry, find us after the break here, and we'll hopefully answer that question.
Right.
But thanks, y'all.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.